Welcome, everyone. Really great to see so many of you here this morning. My name is Sarita Runeberg. I'm the CEO here at Maria01. If we haven't met before, quite a few new faces in the audience as well. Really great to see so many of you here. This is our annual impact report launch. We've been doing this since 2018. And every single year, we prepare a report about the previous year to go through a bit of a kind of the data and the successes, whatever the community has been doing during the past year. So today we'll dig into the reports, and you'll then find it online on our website as well, and then we'll have a panel discussion afterwards as well. But before we jump into any of that, so I would like to welcome our board member, CEO of Supermetrics, Anssi on stage to say a few words. Welcome, Anssi.
Thank you, Sarita. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to this fantastic event. This is one of the highlights of the year when you have the opportunity to look back what really happened. Sometimes every day it feels that nothing happens, but when you look at the whole year at once, you can see a lot has happened. Three things I want to talk very quickly before I let Sarita to dive in deeper to the report itself. The first one is naturally, where are we going in Finland when it comes to our startup ecosystem? I would claim it's getting better all the time, but at the same time, I'm urging that we need to do a lot more. Things are moving so fast in the world right now, and it's just getting faster and faster. I spent the last week in Silicon Valley meeting a lot of different companies, also these hyperscalers, these AI companies like Anthropic, Meta, and the speed of development is just amazing. You can just feel it when you are there and talking with the people. And that sense of urgency is something we definitely need in here. So we are going to a better direction, but we need to go faster. I'm very happy that the ecosystem, if you look back, for example, where it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, a lot better. We have new players supporting founders and startups in different phases in the journey. And if you think about in the beginning, you might have an idea. How do you get started? Well, for example, you have various options. It might be a grant for the startup foundation, or you found your way to an accelerator. We got the Founders House also as a new player in here. Then at some point, you need a place where you're actually building your startup, and Maria01 is one of those perfect places where to do that. And then, if you look at the numbers-wise, the Finnish startup community with few other players did a fantastic study by the end of last year, and the startup and scale-up ecosystem today in Finland is generating more than 10 billion in revenue. That is massive, from 0 to 10 billion in a bit more than 10 years. Fantastic. And now the bar was set up even higher, that by 2030 we would be in 20 billion. That's big numbers if you start to think about what is the impact for Finland and for our economy. And if you're following where Finland's economy is going, this is something we definitely need. And it's such a privilege to work in the board of Maria01 and be contributing to this also. How do we make Finland great again? Second thing I want to talk about is an initiative called 100 times 100. This is an initiative we started to develop in the startup ecosystem, and it's nice to see that a lot of different players are adapting this. 100 times 100, what does it mean? We have a goal that we would have 100 companies who generate more than 100 million revenue. Now, this is a different thing. Many times we talk about how much companies raised money, what was the funding, and part of this report we will talk about that one as well. And that is all great. But still, what really matters is that how does the revenue develop, the actual revenue, the money, the cash. So at the moment, we have, what was the exact number, somewhere between 10 to 15 of these companies, what we called centaurs. So they have companies that have more than 100 million revenue. We definitely need a lot more. And this initiative, adopted by multiple players, is a joint vision and set of activities how we help founders found new companies and then grow them and become even better. This is part of, once again, making Finland great again. Then the third thing is naturally Maria 01. We have a fantastic roadmap for the future. And if you've been following to the news, first of all, what is our starting point? We are in this historical area, and this used to be a hospital. And it has been designed to be a hospital, and a hospital to become a place where companies are built. It's a bit of a leap. And this is also historic and fairly old building, and there's a little bit of legacy in here. And I'm super glad that after quite a few years, the city of Helsinki is making an investment that we're able to build this to a much better place. But it's not only what happens in this building and the surrounding buildings, it's also what is happening over there. And if you've been following the news, Supercell is going to build their new headquarters to that area. So within the next 5 years, we're going to make this much better. Supercell will build their new headquarters in there. We're going to integrate these two areas together. And in 5 years, we're going to have an amazing joint campus area, supporting once again founders and startups to build their companies in much better and a thriving campus area. So much exciting things to look forward. But yeah, let's jump now to the impact report. Welcome, and let's welcome Sarita back on the stage.
All right. So actually, before I get started and diving into the data, there's actually a sneak peek that you guys will get now today. We've been working on something during the past months, and you'll see the results in this presentation. So there's a new brand for Maria 01, and it's going to be rolled out on the campus, on our website, everywhere throughout the spring. But this is now the first time that we actually show it to anyone. So really, really happy to be able to do that too. All right, but maybe to give you a bit of context on kind of what we were thinking about when we started working on this report as well. When I was hired for this role 2.5 years ago, I was told that we need someone who levels up this whole community. And that's really been something that we've been doing for the past years, that whatever we do bigger, we do better. And a bit like Anssi was saying as well, that we really increase the level of ambition here. And that's something that we started doing for this report as well, because I think it reflects this community really well. So instead of just looking at the data that we have from this community here, we started actually reflecting that a bit to the data that is available about Finland, about Finland's role in the global market as well. And in that sense, kind of give maybe perspective to the data that we have here as well. And I think when you've been following the news and especially kind of starting from maybe summer last year, there's really been this momentum building for startups. I'm sure that all of you have noticed that as well. I think politicians from left to right are talking about startups all the time. People really have maybe woken up now to the kind of the fact that if we think about the current model that we have in Finland about like kind of the welfare state and so forth, if we want to keep that in the future as well, we really need more companies, we need more bigger companies, we need more growth for the country, and it is very, very evident, I think, for many now that it is the innovation ecosystem, it's the startups that are actually doing it. And I think often maybe we here in Finland, we don't really always maybe even think about how great of a startup ecosystem we have here and how big it is comparing to many other nations of our size. So we looked a bit into the data, and if we look at the kind of the amount of startups per capita in different countries around Europe, Finland is actually much, much higher in numbers than Europeans on average. So on average in Europe, there's about 41 startups per 100,000 inhabitants. And actually in Finland, this number is 74. So it's almost the double. Obviously, we're still a small nation. This is a smaller ecosystem, but still a very, very relevant one for the size of the country. And what was maybe even more surprising was the aspect on funding. So there's been quite a lot of different pieces of data published in the last couple of months about funding in Europe. But maybe the key thing for Finland was that we actually ranked #1 per capita in VC funding in all of Europe. which is actually amazing in the sense that we hear a lot about these bigger cities actually pulling kind of all the funding there and so forth. But in Finland, this I think was something that we really have not at least seen raised anywhere to the discussion. So therefore we wanted to include these pieces of data here as well. And even globally, Finland is number 4. So there's only these like kind of big players like US and Israel ahead of Finland. So that's also quite amazing in that sense. And when we look at the Maria's startups, so we actually have our startups, our alumni, representing about 14% of all the Finnish startups. But that being said, our startups have corresponded to around 22% of all the funding that has been coming to startups in Finland. So I think that's also a great testament that we obviously always want to focus on the most potential success stories, those future growers and future global companies. And I think this speaks for itself in the sense that we've been able to get those companies here. And of course, we'll work on this even more in the future. In 2025, when I was going through the data and we talked about this with the team, so we kind of came to the conclusion that there was a couple of words that would sum this last year up quite well. And of course, I mean, we live in very uncertain times and there's a lot of turmoil happening in the society. But for us here, 2 words really kind of sum this up. So growth and diversity. And I'll talk a bit more about that and why. We had, in general, bigger startups at Maria. So that means that we had a lot of companies that started growing quite quickly. There were around 230 startups over the year here, and nearly 2,000 people, a lot of different investors, a lot of corporate partners here as well. But in general, the companies that we had here started growing quite rapidly. We saw a lot of companies hiring, and then we saw a lot of bigger funding rounds as well. Let's talk about these in a moment. And when it comes to diversity, so obviously something that for us was quite an interesting data point to look at was the amount of startups that wanted to join our community. Last year it was 188 startups that applied to become members at Maria. This was 10% more than the previous year and actually the highest number ever to date. And that meant that 43 startups got in. That was around 23%. That's also the lowest number that we've had in many years. And the reason for this is simply that we had so many growers in the community here that then there was just not more space in the community for all the newcomers. So hopefully this year as well, we'll be able to organize the space in a way that will still be able to receive more startups here as well. But I think the trend that we've been seeing in the past couple of years is really continuing still, that when we see that there's a lot of layoffs from the corporate world as well, there's a lot of new founders coming in. Interesting to see in the future whether kind of the more general data about the new startups and the amount of new startups will support this. But we've seen this for a couple of years already, that there's quite a lot of new startups being founded, and especially by founders that are coming from the more maybe established companies, the corporate world, and are now kind of building their companies then, or starting to build companies when they left their corporate careers. And this is something that I often call as sort of a mini Nokia phenomenon, in the sense that this obviously happened quite a lot and like in great masses after the big Nokia layoffs back in the day. But very interesting to see what kind of companies these people are then building in the longer run as well. Because of course, they're people that come with very, very validated problems, with very great connections in the industry as well. And in that sense, a very good position to start building something new. This is the diversity angle is something that I'm especially proud about. Both of these numbers have increased since the previous year, which I think is amazing. So we look at the amount of international founders, as in non-Finnish founders in the community, and we look at the amount of female founders in the community as well. And last time for the 24 report, we had 36% of our companies have international founders and 15% have female founders. And both of these numbers have now gone up. We've actually taken quite a lot of actions in terms of increasing these numbers, especially focusing on female founders. And it was really, really great to see that there's been success and growth in this. Of course, we still talk about small numbers when we talk about 18, and there's definitely a lot of work to do still. But I think it's amazing to see that this has really improved quite significantly as well. And I think throughout this year, especially in terms of the female founder aspect, we have really seen that we have in the startup ecosystem as well, we have a huge untapped potential in terms of problems that could be solved by those people that would see those problems around them. Because of course we all, all the founders solve the kind of problems that they see around themselves. So then a male founder, for example, in his life sees very different problems than a female founder would, or a minority founder for that matter. So then we have a lot of different solutions that are waiting to be built by those kind of founders that don't yet know that they are founders. So hopefully this is also something that we can then focus even more heavily on this year as well. The industry aspect, I know this is really tiny, but you'll see it from the report as well. The industry still remained very diverse as well. You all know that we are industry agnostic, so there's startups from very many different industries in our community. The biggest changes that we saw here comparing to the previous year were that obviously everything that has to do with health, defense, these kind of areas started growing massively. But also I think we see a lot of a shift towards the European sovereignty, shifting towards kind of working more with those kind of things that make the companies kind of compliant in the EU as well. So for example, compliance and legal startups started growing quite a lot in the industry share as well, which is also quite interesting. But there's still a very wide, diverse group of companies here from very many different industries. And when it comes to funding, this is something that was quite interesting as well. We saw that there were less funding rounds, quite a lot less actually, but the funding rounds that we had were significantly bigger. And this week we've been speaking a lot in the media, and I've been asked about that quite a few times, that what does this mean? And I've often answered then that I think it means that our ecosystem is maturing. We are able to attract those bigger rounds, which some years ago still were a challenge that we were not able to do that. We didn't get those kind of rounds, tens of millions to Finland, but now we're starting to get those across different industries. So that is obviously a very, very positive direction. But that being said, we of course still need even more of those early stage rounds as well, because in this field it's really a numbers game that we really need a lot of those early stage founders in order to actually be able to have those bigger ones in the coming years. And this is really one of the key findings for the report. If you look at the data, last year our startups, the Maria startups, our alumni startups, got the record funding throughout the history of Maria 01, which of course is an amazing achievement. Maybe an applause for that. Thank you. So like you see from the data, there's been a couple of years that we've seen that, for example, international investment has not come that much to Finland and so forth, but this last year really changed. And obviously we had some big drivers to this. We had Nest AI here and Verda as well, closing a bigger round and so forth. But I think this is still something that talks about this ecosystem becoming more and more mature, being able to attract international funding, and then of course also the international investors also looking at the Nordic countries a lot more. We see that very, very concretely in the sense that now of course Sweden leading the AI boom and attracting kind of the investors' eyes towards the Nordics. So that really shows here as well that there's more and more international investors that, for example, are joining our investor network all the time. And when it comes to the funding split, this is something that we, for the first time, looked at last year, kind of how is the funding divided between the different groups. So I mentioned the shares of international founders, female founders as well. In the previous report, international founders closed a bit more or a bigger share of the funding. Now it was slightly lower, 23%. There I think it's very mainly related to some of the bigger rounds being run by those companies that are mostly Finnish-led. But what I'm quite happy about is that those companies that have female founders have actually now closed a much bigger share of the funding. Still a too small one, but a bigger one. So in 24, 15% of female founders closed 1.4% of all the funding, and now 18% of female founders have closed 9% of all the funding. So the direction is right, but we still have a lot of work to do to actually bring that into somewhere closer to 50% as well. And obviously, all those numbers, they look a bit different if you flip them around. So we have been very happy about those 18%, for example, for female founders. But if you flip it the other way around, that 82% of the teams are all male teams. So then it sounds very different. So that's definitely something that we'll keep an eye on as well, and we'll work on to actually increase those numbers even further. Last year, this time, after the first kind of data points was clear to us about the 15% of female founders, so we launched the Launchpad program, which we've been running this whole past year, and that is something that we'll be scaling further this year too. And there's already discussions about a few other initiatives where we could then help more women come into this field as well, and obviously more international founders as well. Then if we talk about kind of the employment angle and how especially AI has been affecting this. So we really saw a shift in the amounts of headcounts in comparison with the revenue. So startups have been growing more and more, but with less people. And I think this is kind of a testament to our time, that something that we've heard kind of in the corridors as well, that there's more and more teams that are actually able to do more with less people. We've had now over the years, our companies generate close to 15,000 jobs, but like you see from the pink graph, it's been slowly going down. And this is at the same time when the revenue has been going up. I'll show it on the next slide. And the salaries at the same time, they go up as well. So this really speaks its own language about the role of AI, the role of like kind of efficiency that the companies are having in their business. And of course, then the fact that we live in a very different time now. So all the founders need to be a lot leaner, and you really have to think about kind of the composition of your team a lot more as well. But over 30% of our startups still increased their personnel in 24. These numbers, by the way, they always go like kind of 1 year behind, but still a quite a good amount. And so when I mentioned the revenue, so you see here as well that the revenue grew significantly. So last year as in 24, because these numbers are 1 year behind, we had in 24 559 million in terms of revenue coming from our startups, which is also the highest number so far as well. And some of the companies growing at like thousands % in terms of their revenue as well. Very many big funding rounds that were made last year, and also historically as well, like we see here on the right-hand side. And something that's going back a bit to the beginning that I mentioned about the ambition and kind of raising the ambition level. So we have this belief, and it's actually a very core part of the new brand as well, that we really believe that ambition is attracting ambition. The more we have ambitious people here, even more ambitious people will get here as well. And that's something that we've been focusing very heavily on. So one of the big initiatives that we had last year was the Northern Light Accelerator. So Maria01 has never had an accelerator program of our own before. And we wanted to start working on something that is going to be international level. So we don't aim to be building the best program in Finland, but it needs to be the best in Europe, one of the best in the world. And that's kind of what we were starting to aim at. And the idea there was that we will have an international focus from the get-go. And that meant that we started crafting the program in a way that every single team that joins the program needs to have at least one non-Finnish founder. In the first batch that we had last autumn, we actually had all the founders being of non-Finnish origin, and most of them coming to Finland specifically for this program as well. So we had 10 startups. They were coming from several countries, 7 different countries, and then they were building here their products, finding product market fit in the Nordic countries, in Europe, and over 40% of them decided to stay in Finland as well after the program. And I think what was really, really great to see is that during the first couple of months of the program, it's a 3-month program, we already got featured in some quite predominant media outlets as well, that this is one of the up-and-coming accelerators in Europe. And of course, that's the trend that we want to stick to as well. And actually, the next batch is starting next Monday. So we're super, super excited. I don't know if we already have some of the new batch members here in the room as well, but we'll have an even more international team there, and there's going to be even more companies joining as well. So there's 14 companies now that we've confirmed, and they're coming from Argentina, Brazil, Thailand, Japan, and everywhere in between. And really, really excited to have all these startups here. The reason why we want to kind of build this kind of a program, of course, helping these startups, but then obviously also for the reason that I think for the first batch, we already saw that when we're able to kind of inject this energy from outside of our own ecosystem to our ecosystem, it really kind of helps our own founders as well to see that, okay, if we here think that we're running fast, seeing how fast these guys are running actually kind of will increase the speed for us as well. It will increase the ambition level, because some of the founders that we had coming for the first batch as well, I've been in this ecosystem for close to 15 years, and I haven't seen that kind of ambition and that kind of drive in many of the founders before. So it was really, really amazing to see, and that's why we're very much looking forward to the next program as well. Then we had a couple of other big initiatives as well. So again, going back to what I said, that everything is done bigger and better. So we switched our former pitching day, converted that into an international pitching competition. For the first time ever, it was a competition. For the first time ever, it was open for the international audience. And we had 110 companies coming from 20 different countries to pitch here, 9 consecutive hours on 2 different stages. We had 10 different industry tracks as well. And only 30% of those startups were our own members. And why this is relevant is that while I believe that it's very important for us here in our community to spar amongst each other and kind of learn from each other, but I again think that it's very, very important that we see that kind of what sort of companies are coming from elsewhere as well, and what can we learn from them. Last fall, we also organized the first ever startup festival, so called Meri01 Next. So that actually brought a record amount of people on the campus. And if you were here then, you know that the vibe was something that we rarely experience here. So over 1,000 people came here. We had a lot of different events, a lot of different content pieces as well, and activities around the campus as well. And that's also something that we're planning on doing again this year as well. In general, close to 400 events organized here, ranging from peer-to-peer meetings to knowledge sharing to more relaxed kind of gatherings as well, but all of them focusing on the community, because the community is really what we double down on, especially on these times when people really need to have their like-minded people around them, and that's kind of something that we will focus on even heavier in the future. And yeah, thank you. Let's head to the panel discussion. Thanks.
So today our topic will be Finland on the rise, how a small nation builds one of the world's most efficient startup engines. I'm Camilla Mikama, I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager here at Meri01, and I've been the project lead for the impact report. We could start with a quick round of introductions.
Hi, my name is Mika Sivonen. I work at UpCloud. We are a Finnish-based cloud company. We operate, we're Helsinki founded in 2011, and in essence, what do? We provide the Lego blocks of the internet, and in case there's strangers to the cloud here, so the Supercells and the Rovios and the Volts of the world, they don't actually have servers in their basements. They build everything in the cloud. They might have a server somewhere, but a majority of these services are built in the cloud. That's what we do at UpCloud. We're a Finnish-based company, and yeah, we do it sovereignly here, based out of Helsinki. Good to be here.
Hello, my name is Katja Boxberg. I'm a business reporter in Talouselämä, which is a weekly business magazine, the Economist of Finland, as we like to call it. I'm also author of a recent book, Story of Voltin tarina, and I've been following the scale-ups and startups for many years. I also have a very long experience in business reporting, so I've been following the Finnish like businesses and economy for 30 years. Good to be here.
All right, I think I already introduced myself. By the way, great book, thank you. If you haven't read it, please read it. It's a great story. And I'll tell a few words about more. So Anssi, Rusi, day job is CEO of Supermetrics, but then outside of that one, I'm basically spending a lot of time in the startup and scale-up ecosystem, have been 6 years in the board of Startup Foundation, now in the board of Maria 01, and other activities outside of that one as well. Supermetrics is one of the scale-ups we have in Finland. We build a marketing intelligence platform. We have customers in 120 countries at the moment, more than 60 million revenue. And yeah, that's it.
Sarita needs no introduction.
Don't think so.
Everyone knows Sarita.
Yeah. So let's start with a kind of warm-up question. What does the Finnish startup ecosystem look like today? Where do we stand globally?
If I may start, I think it looks amazing. As Anssi said earlier, like, you know, we started from zero, like approximately 15 years ago. And now if the combined revenue is around 12 billion euros, it's amazing achievement. But at the same time, it has to be said that it's only a beginning. And what I'm afraid of, I'm not really afraid of, but I think what should be taken into consideration is that we should not be pleased with the progress added as it is. We need so much more growth in this country.
If I'll continue from that one, we can be very happy of the good like first 15 years going from zero to where we are today. But then if we shift the perspective and we look at where are we compared to other countries or what's happening in the world, I spent the last week in Silicon Valley and seeing what's happening in there. And my feeling in every single meeting there is, oh my God, how much we have to do. So we should always like set our ambition correctly, not to aim to be the best in Finland or best in Nordics, but be the best in the world. And to achieve that, so much things to do.
You fully concur with the other panelists. So I think the impact report and the data there, I think that's a testament on already that, you know, we are doing well indeed, and the ecosystem is healthy. It's a bit more diverse these days as well. If you go back 10 years, it's mainly mobile gaming companies and whatnot. And now I think the spread of industries is much, much broader. So I think we're doing amazing on that front. But indeed, I concur with Anssi. So there's still a lot to do, and the pace is only getting more rapid. And I think Silicon Valley is one, but we are going to be competing more with Tallinn in the future, with Stockholm in the future, Paris, Madrid. So the competition is only going to get more fierce. So we're doing well, but yeah, the pace has to be kept on.
Yeah, I could not agree more. But I think like one of the things that I would maybe add still as well, I think we as ecosystem, we should benchmark those different ecosystems a lot more and like kind of keep an eye on them and learn from them, work like from the different ecosystems, and maybe adding to your list like also the Asian ecosystem, like say Shanghai, Beijing as well, and those that have been growing massively and will be growing at an increasing speed still as well. So just making sure that a bit like what I referred to in my report speech as well is that I think we need to be able to inject that kind of the speed and the drive that is elsewhere into our own ecosystem as well, and learn from that and not just like kind of celebrate the local wins.
And also, like, you know, there are still like, even if Sarita was rightly saying that there is a new kind of like acknowledgement in the society, like, you know, that now we have this sector and there is like growth, what there isn't in any other sector at the moment. There are still massive hinders, like, you know, growth hinders, and that those should be abolished as quickly as possible. And I think the Finnish government, like, you know, I was very happy to hear Prime Minister Petteri Orpo, who was recently in Startup Ministeria podcast. So that was a gesture that he acknowledges, like, you know, that there is something happening. But at the same time, I have to say that I was a bit shocked even how little, honestly. I mean, the impression was that he wasn't really, he didn't really know the sector, he didn't know the companies, he didn't actually have a clue what the government could and should do. But as said, that was a good start that he took part and put himself, went there to visit.
I need to continue from that. What is actually a positive thing is that not only he visited the podcast, but actually he invited a delegation of startups and scale-ups to Kesäranta, so where the Prime Minister sits. And so there's been 2 times in the recent 4 months that the delegation has been there, and there has been an open dialogue. The startups and scale-ups, the community have been sharing that these are the blockers that we have at the moment. So at least they're listening now. 5 years ago, even that didn't happen.
Half a year ago, that didn't happen. Yeah, exactly. Now I lost my point.
Yeah, I think it's a good conversation, and I think half year is a very, very good mark, since I've observed exactly the same thing. I think one of the things that has happened over the past 6 months, or even past 12 months, is that we've moved from buzz to numbers, and specifically economic impact. So I think what the startup community, but also startup Ministeriö, Engström and Ahopelto, what they're doing really, really well is quantifying it. And now there's numbers to the game. It's not just Pöhinä or buzz, but it's actual economic impact. And I think the impact report here as well, with the salaries paid, with the jobs created, with the funding raised, I think this is spot on for what we should be doing and raising the importance.
Actually, now I remember my point. My point was that the Prime Minister is the most informed person in the country, And when he said there, very sweetly, actually, that please tell us about the startup community. Please tell us the startup stories, that's a good reminder that even if we here and me in the media, we live in this bubble and we all think everybody knows about this. But when the Prime Minister, the most informed person in this country, is so much out in the woods, that's a great reminder that we should be drumming the drums and keeping noise as hell.
Katja, can I quote you on that? Prime Minister being out in the woods. You both, Katja and Anssi, mentioned that there are some blockers for the growth. Do you want to elaborate on that? What is actually blocking or hindering the growth?
I think the growth, everybody here knows that the growth is a function of 2 things, capital and talent. And in both these areas, there's a lot to do. The startup community, Maria 01 and Ahopelto and Engström and Morten Mikkos and all the others been telling all the time, that there are some things in the taxation which hinder investment in the funds in Finland. There's a lot to do still in attracting, especially foreign talent. We are totally dependent on this, and there we are really lacking behind Sweden. There's a reason why. There are many reasons why Sweden is so much ahead of us, but this is one of the reasons. Sweden has always been much better in both welcoming entrepreneurial people and talent.
Yeah, if I build on that one, it's absolutely true. Capital and talent play a crucial role, and a lot of positive development, as we saw how much, for example, in Maria 01, we have international founders in here and teams. That is great, because if we think about the future, how much we need startups and scale-ups in Finland, they're not all going to be founded by Finns. So we need more talent abroad to come here. Okay, how do we get them here? We can't compete with the weather, unfortunately, but we can compete with many other things. But then there are some structural issues that we just need to clear. And whether it's getting the permits to come in here, whether the taxation is incentive, because this is once again, this is a global competition. And we should all the time, when our politics are making decisions, they should be looking Finland versus others, not just what happens inside Finland. This is sometimes where we fail, and we look too much in the past when we should be looking more into the future, that how to make this happen. And there's a long list, but these are the key things.
Yeah. Startups at Murray01 raised record funding in 2025 with larger rounds but fewer deals. What do you think? What does this signal?
I think more than anything, it's related to the phenomenon that we saw in the investment world, so stock exchanges and the stocks around the world. Last year, if you look at the risk profile in any type of investment, obviously funding is just an investment at the end of the day. If you look at the risk profile in the whole world, the risk profile increased quite significantly. At the same time, you have a very disrupting technology, AI. So I think right now what you see is a diversion of like two different paths. So you have the winners and you have the losers. If you look at the NVIDIAs and the AI darlings of the US. So obviously they're the big winners. And I think to a degree we saw the same thing happening in Finland. So like some of the rounds, they're huge, but then the risk profile as a overall, that's increased, hence leading to fewer funding rounds. That's my theory anyway.
I'm super excited and happy to see that we have more companies who are able in Finland to raise larger rounds, and also that we have today better capabilities to fund this. For example, Lifeline Ventures has their new fund, which is very large. That is great. Is that enough? No. And for example, Timo Hopelta and Jyri Engeström, when they talk in Startup Ministry, they have talked a lot about should, for example, we allocate more our pension funds to invest in startups and scale-ups. And if you think about, I don't have exact numbers, but you can do the math yourself, how much, for example, Volt raised capital and how much that came from abroad and how much those investors benefited from all that great work, we could have benefited a lot more ourselves if we would have chosen a little bit different investment strategy that there is. So in one way, excited about that. At the same time, I'm a bit concerned because what we're seeing is that the spread is getting, or let's put it this way, the shape of the startups it's not a pyramid anymore that you have a strong base and funding would get equally. Now it's funding gets more, the shape is more that there's actually a very small tip of the iceberg that is getting a lot. And I'm very concerned that are there enough new startups being born? Because based on the data I've seen, that's been on the declining trend lately.
That's a good point. I mean, we need obviously like these big rounds and often they come from abroad, but we also need like angel investment and early stage funding and that hopefully, I mean, should come more from domestic sources. And I totally agree with Anssi, like, you know, we definitely need some allocation of the pension funds to this sector. That's such a no-brainer. I mean, I'm getting really annoyed that hasn't been done into a bigger extent now. Yeah.
And according to PitchBook data and the impact report, Finland ranks among the global leaders in VC funding per capita. Why is that?
I think there's more than one reason for this. I think Nokia was mentioned earlier as well. We have a history when it comes to engineering and when it comes to IT specifically. So you look at the past 30 years, Finland is very strong on that front. I think there is a bigger aspect to it. So I think especially in the VC world, the startup world, and the hypergrowth world, there's an economic factor that kind of works in our advantage here because it is such a big disadvantage actually. So Finland doesn't really have an internal market. So you can't really build a Supercell or Rovio or Supermetrics for that matter. It's very difficult to build it just for the Finnish internal market. So as such, founders are in essence forced to think globally immediately, right from the get-go. And a majority of the companies, they operate a born global model, especially if if they don't have to build anything that's regulated or anything that's like local market specific. So obviously Supercell, as soon as you launch the game, you can launch it everywhere. So I think like that really plays into some of these Finnish companies' advantage.
And I think it is a really, really huge advantage because I've seen a lot of these cases where, for example, Japan and Brazil are great examples that you have a big internal market. So they actually struggle a lot with the fact that their founders don't want to go outside of the country. And we don't really have the luxury of staying here because in any case, even if your own home market is a big one, the world is a bigger one. So in that sense, I think it's a huge thing that plays to our advantage. I think maybe to add there as well, that I think kind of investors are, of course, looking to make a good deal. They're looking to make money with that as well. So in that sense, I think we have a good track record in Finland and the Nordics in general, that there's a lot of really great companies that have come from here. And it's not like kind of only one or two anymore, but there's actually very many from different kinds of industries, different backgrounds that have actually kind of built a big business globally. So therefore, I think what I mentioned before as well, that I think Finland has become even more attractive to international investors.
Also, to add there, like, you know, investors are humans, and there is a certain herd mentality, like, you know, I mean, there have been, like, you know, good examples like Oura and Volt and Supercell and so on, like, you know, and the investors, they talk, I mean, the international investors as well, I mean, they talk to each other, and that's also a small bubble in a way, and when they like see that, okay, I mean, those guys made money with whatever Volt, like, you know, that spreads, and that's obviously a positive thing, like. But when it comes to this, like foreign versus domestic capital, I think it's like Aura, like recently announced that they are moving their headquarters to the States, like, you know, and that's also one reason why we seriously need more domestic funding to keep these like treasures. I mean, to as long as possible, like, you know, here to generate more growth and more, basically more money.
And continuing from that point, I think when you look at the ecosystems anywhere in the world, I think the previous successes, they really fuel the next ones. I think Helsinki is really it could be at the tipping point. You know, fingers crossed right now for being optimistic. Helsinki could be at the tipping point now with the you know, the successful alumni of the Smartleys, of the Supermetrics, of the Supercells, Rovios, whatnot. Silo, yeah, quite a few. You saw the same thing happening in Tallinn. Hopefully right now is the moment for Helsinki. There's two reasons like why that could happen. Capital is obviously, a big part of it, but potentially even more important is something Sarita and I discussed just earlier this morning. So once you see a hyper growth company like this from the inside, what you see and what you learn there, you can't build that talent anywhere else. You can't pick it up in a book. It's well, hopefully you can pick it up in the Ahopelto and Engström book, but it's very difficult to experience anywhere else and learn anywhere else. And I think, like, you know, at the end of the day, that's sort of like the DNA of many of these companies.
That's a hugely important point. I mean, that's something new, like, you know, that hasn't existed in Finland before. We haven't had these companies where you could have learned this, like, you know, from like first hand, like, you know. And I think, like, and we can see that already, like, you know, people from Volt, Supercell, and Aura, and Silo, and so on, like many others, they have grown like new, also investors, like, you know, also angel investors, like, you know, and that's fantastic, and that hasn't been there before, so that will really can really make a change. And also, like, you know, that they are people, I mean, who have been working in these companies and learned, and, you know, they are anxious to build their own startups and scale-ups and so on, like, you know. So I really think, I totally agree that Finland or Helsinki, I mean, is in the tipping point. I think there is a Helsinki spirit, thanks to you guys as well. And I think, you know, the future is going to be really bright, I mean. But there are some things we need to do before that.
Yeah, there's a good network effect going on at the moment that naturally those companies that were born, people leave and found there's more second-time founders than ever before. That is great. And then also these people who made some sort of an exit, they usually become angel investors as well. They start to advise other companies. That's a good thing. And that kind of a spirit of contributing and helping each other is super important, that we have that mindset.
And I would maybe add still to like what Mika said, that like also from the other aspect that once you've experienced a high growth company, I often say that you can never do anything slowly ever again. So in that sense, there's a lot of people that we've already kind of had working in these companies. There was a discussion in some of the Smartly WhatsApp groups last year that the Smartlys around the world have now, or the alumni of Smartly have founded over 100 companies around the world, which I think is a great testament to a company that was only founded like a bit over a decade ago. And I think it's something that we see here on this campus as well, that there's more and more of those founders that are coming from the background in some of the scale-ups, in some of the high-growth companies that we've had. And it's really, really good direction that we're starting to build this founder flywheel.
So there's clear momentum going on and a tipping point. But how can startups become a major driver in Finland's economic growth? Is there something specific we should do maybe to leverage this tipping point and momentum?
I think we go once again back to some of the topics we already discussed. There's the capital, there is the talent, and then it's also the ambition mindset that we have. And then just making sure that these network effects that we have going on, that they continue flying on. And then we need to remove these annoying blockers that there is at the moment. It just annoys me so much. I could tell numerous examples where my head just explodes, how we make things difficult for ourselves. We have enough challenges out there to conquer the world, but sometimes we're our own worst enemy.
And could, for example, digital sovereignty become an economic opportunity for Finnish startups in Finland?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is definitely a trend that we're seeing kind of across the old continent. So digital sovereignty, technological sovereignty. In case you've opened any single news media outlet over the past 12 months, you've definitely heard of the term. Who here was at Slush this year? Or previous year, obviously. So one thing that I observed that was quite different this time around in Slush, it was more political than ever and less Silicon Valley centric than ever. So more Europe centric all the way from the sign coming in. So it's much more Europe centric now. So it really feels like it could be Europe's moment right now. And it could really be that we start building both services, companies and infrastructure that's actually sovereign from inside Europe for Europe. And I think, just in Helsinki, we have two cloud companies that are aiming for the moon and really pitching in on the sovereignty aspect. ISI, definitely one, and I think dual use as a whole could really be an industry that pulls Finland out of the slump that we're in currently. That could definitely be one of them. And one of the pieces of data that I saw in the impact report that was quite fascinating was that 85% of the Nordic funding in dual use went to Finland directly. So actually we punch way above our weight on this front, and I think in fields like that, the sovereignty is a huge aspect.
And it's something we should pay more attention, and if we think about Finland as a country, what kind of software or services we are acquiring. And I think it's a little bit sad thing what is happening right now, and it's been in the press as well, that a lot of our money goes to the big ones, AWS, so Amazon, Microsoft, Google. And are we even thinking that, hey, we actually have local players here who can support us? I think there is sometimes this playing too safely and going for the established players instead of looking what do we really have in our own market today. And that's the way that we could get a lot more value.
Yeah, and I think us Europeans, we really need to do a better job in, shouting at the top of the hills and really make ourselves known. There's a LinkedIn post that we discussed earlier from Oskari, from the CEO of Ivan, and really just stating the facts that some of the news on these topics, they're not factually correct. There was a statement that you couldn't find the alternatives in Europe. You absolutely can. And I think, there's many opinion leaders from the Aura Sallas to some of these European founders that are really vouching for this right now and becoming more and more loud. And obviously from UpCloud's perspective, expect us to be much more louder in the future. And I think what Anssi is saying here, is that we should really think twice on like where do we actually spend our public money. That's all of your money as well. And when Oikeusministeriö, for example, when they say that they're moving to AWS for cost reasons and like really challenge a couple of obvious challenges there for sovereignty. Make no mistake, that's the most expensive cloud in the world. So make no mistake.
And I think one of the things that kind of this really focuses on is the confidence or the lack of confidence in Finland. And I think it's what you mentioned about Petteri Orpo not knowing the startup ecosystem. I think this is a general thing that we still have a lot of people outside of the startup ecosystem who don't really understand how kind of well-built solutions we are able to build in Finland, that we have everything that it takes. We have very, very high-level engineering skills. We've built companies for a long time. We've built solutions for a long time already. So it's not like there's some new hacky products that you can't really rely on, but they're actually world-class products that you could really put your election data into or whatnot. And this, I think, is something that we should maybe as a nation start doing a lot more as well, that we start kind of believing in our abilities, that our products are equally good or often even better than many of the other ones that are available on the market.
This is also a wake-up call for big corporations. I mean, Finnish corporations. I mean, who could buy much more, like products and solutions from the domestic scale-ups and startups. Like I think, I mean, we know. I mean, from the data, like that the big corporations are very risk averse and in many respects. But this is also one respect which should and could be changed.
But it's actually what we see happening, at least in our community, is that very often when our startups are looking for pilot customers, for example, they need to head outside of Finland. Because even though we would have, for example, big industrial companies in Finland who could easily pilot the solutions that some of our startups, for example, have had, but often there's that much like risk aversion, there's that much like maybe wariness towards like trying something new, that then you can actually find a pilot partner easier from Germany or from France than you can find from here, which I think is a bit sad, but then again, of course, an opportunity to go global since the very, very beginning.
Then we also have good positive examples. I'm very positively surprised and happy that, for example, our Finnish defense forces are embracing now the partnerships with the local startups that we have here at the moment, and that is a great step forward.
That's definitely one of the big pluses in Finland, like that we have this defense, or this national defense and engineering capabilities, like which is like still extraordinary, and those are indeed factors. I mean, to be very positive about the future.
And what do you think? Which sectors will drive the next wave of growth? Will that be maybe deep tech, defense and dual use, AI, climate tech, or something entirely new?
I think in the immediate term, AI is a pretty safe bet. So something on the AI front is probably pretty difficult to say what exactly on that front it's going to be. I think Finland, with its background in deep industry, deep technology, IT, I think we're going to see a lot of deep tech companies growing big, and hopefully, in case we speculate on us being on the tipping point, hopefully these companies actually grow big while they're still in Helsinki. That could be amazing. As a human, I have to say that I'm really, really optimistic and really would like to place my bets on the climate tech. So I think in a few years' time, we're going to see a massive swing for climate tech. Not because it's not for philosophical reasons or whatever. I think we have to in a few years' time. It's really unfortunate, but I think like there's going to be a massive swing on that front, and the economics of that are going to be changing over the next few years. I would imagine as well. So I'm really, really hoping that we're like Finland's going to be at the top of that wave. If not Finland, at least the Nordics.
Also, defense is going to be big, like that's obvious, like even, and hopefully, I mean, when the war in Ukraine will end, like there will be a huge spending by the European countries, I mean, on defense, and there Finland is very strong. I just recently talked to Tuomas Rasila of Sensor Fusion, and they are on fire.
I'm personally seeing that we are in the middle of a industrial revolution right now, whether you want to admit it or not, but we are. And what is different this time compared to, for example, when smartphones came or when internet came, is that the speed of development is something we've never seen before. Things happen so fast. You can't compare it to the previous ages that happened. And this is, at the same time, it's an opportunity, but it's also a threat. And that's why, for everyone, they need to look at this with reality and just accept the facts and embrace the change that there is. I see that the new technology basically enables you to do things fundamentally differently in almost every single industry. Let's say in software industry, you can already, it's like a night and day. People are building products in days or weeks, which previously were months or years. It's just amazing. And it also unlocks to do things in a fundamentally differently. If you, in the past, if you wanted to build a software as a service product, you had to have engineers, software engineers, product managers, designers. Today you don't. You can just like do things yourself. As long as you have curiosity, you want to learn, your problem solving, you can get these things done. And this new way of doing things opens up so much opportunities to accelerate the pace of development regardless of the industry that there is. Naturally, the more we go to hardware or that type of things, it will take a longer time, but robotics will come as well. That is developing so fast. And I would encourage everyone, regardless of the industry where they are, to just monitor what is happening in the world and what the new technology enables you to do and adapt it as quickly as possible.
I would maybe still add, and I'm second totally what all of you said, but maybe kind of going back to defense and especially dual use, I think that is where the big opportunity really is because if we look at, for example, what happened in Germany around the Second World War, so there was a lot of companies that still exist to this day that used to serve the war industry, like say Hugo Boss was generating or making jackets for the soldiers and whatnot, like technology of their time. And it still kind of exists because they were able to switch their business off from kind of the wartime needs to the more peacetime needs then as well. And I think this is something that we should see as a huge opportunity in Finland as well, that I know that, for example, Defense Forces right now is monitoring all the Finnish startups very carefully, like the founders that have built their startups for some other reason to solve some other kind of a problem entirely, that solution actually might have a dual use purpose as well. So I think there's a huge potential for this industry in particular, and that's probably something where we'll see massive growth in the coming years as well.
Yeah, and specifically on that front, I think drones are one obvious technology. So right now they're taking massive technological leaps for unfortunate reasons, obviously. But the drone technologies, I think, like, right now a founder out there might be thinking somewhere that where are drones not used yet, but they could be used in 12 months. And those could be like, big bets that could be the winners. There's another field that I do want to mention here. So one field that we're completely forgetting. So Helsinki is super strong in mobile gaming, if not the global powerhouse. So a safe bet also for the next 5 or 10 years is going to be that there's going to be another global gaming company from Helsinki.
I have to go back to Tuomas Rasila and sensor fusion. I mean, what was very interesting and fantastic, they are growing like hell, and they are also hiring in big numbers. So that's a very positive thing, and that's obviously not only one company, but I mean, if you're looking for a job, call Tuomas Rasila.
Yeah, he's a fantastic guy.
That's a good tip. And going back to what Anssi said about the speed, are the Finnish startups kind of quick enough to adopt AI, like truly adopt it and adopt maybe robotics as well, or like drones and these new technologies?
I would say we are adapting, but too slow. And I would say some are adapting faster and some slower. This also depends. At the moment, the industry talks about AI native startups. So they're fairly young startups who've been founded within the last couple of years. And when they have founded, they have this new technology. So naturally, you don't have any legacy. So you are able to rethink how you do your product, how you do your go-to-market. And when I'm looking at these companies, they operate very differently than, for example, other software companies founded 10 years ago. And then I told to everyone at Supermetrics that we need to do a massive transformation. We have been built according to the best practices of software as a service companies, like they used to be done 5 to 10 years ago. But that's the old playbook. Now we need to transform to work according to the new playbook. And change is always hard. Because if you have worked according to certain routines and best practices, what the industry has adopted well, moving to something new, it's always hard. But it's just something one needs to do very, very quickly.
And I think kind of in order to speed that up, I think it's even more relevant that we also have founders from very many different backgrounds and from very many different generations as well. So one of the big focus areas for us, for example, recently has been that we'd like to have more Gen Z founders at Maria as well, because I feel that we have a lot of experienced founders, but then we need a lot more of that kind of that generation that is now building the Lovables and Legoras of our time. And that's why I think it was really amazing that Founders House was set up here. I think I saw Camilla somewhere in the audience as well. And kind of why we are working together with them then as well to make sure that more of these companies are being kind of built in Helsinki.
I think it's very important to talk about the speed, and I think speed is needed also on a broader societal level. I'm going back to the government and the things they could do. I mean, I think now we should take bold, brave, and very, very speedy solutions, what comes to indeed attracting talent and getting rid of these obstacles we talked about earlier. And I think this is something there's a general election next year. I mean, I think towards that's the last moment. I mean, to act actually. I think so speed is needed also on outside the startups.
Speed is relative. I remember when I started my career, and this is a long time ago, about 25 years ago, and we were providing software to one of our large forest companies. And even at that point, I felt that, man, they're slow. And then one of our salespeople said that, yeah, but Anssi, you need to remember, they are moving as fast as the tree is growing. That was their benchmark, because speed is relative. And this is once again, where does everyone set their benchmark? If you're comparing, are we growing faster than some other Finnish company? Maybe not the right way of doing. We should always look at globally and set your benchmark accordingly. Who is moving fastest in the world? And that should be your benchmark.
And if we compare Finland to Sweden, for example, what are our strengths and differences? Are we on a similar growth trajectory, perhaps?
I think Finland is always 10, 15, 20 years behind Sweden, so I'm very optimistic that we are getting there. I hope that this is this 20 years differences in the old world, and nowadays I mean the difference is smaller, but we are behind them in many aspects. Sweden has a different economy. I mean, they have a different history. I mean, they have a different ecosystem. They have big different investment or VCs, and there's a totally different attitude. What we can actually, I always my favorite thing has been to say if we would build a joint venture or merge with Sweden, I think we wouldn't lose that much. But actually nowadays I think there's one thing where we would lose a little bit, and that's the national defense attitude. But seriously, yes, I think we are behind, but hopefully catching up.
I think with Sweden, there's a good note to keep in mind. So while Sweden is absolutely the right comparison for Finland, it is a brutal comparison. Just because of the fact that they're in many fields, in many In many orientations, Sweden is the best in the whole world. I personally think Sweden is the best country in the whole world for marketing. So they punch way above their weight. So there are only 10 million people. Everyone, everywhere in the world knows about Sweden. Everyone knows the colors. Everyone knows köttbullar. Everyone knows ABBA. So I think at the end of the day, actually, Sweden is so amazing in so many things. So indeed, Finland is catching up, and it is a brutal comparison, but it is the right one. And I think like now what's been delightful to see is that a little brother really stands tall. And there used to be an old sort of truth in Finland that Finnish people and Finland cannot build B2C companies. That doesn't seem to be true anymore. If you look at Oura, if you look at Volt, we definitely can build B2C companies. We definitely can market these. So I think we are catching up, and we're seeing positive signals on that front, but it is a brutal comparison nonetheless.
But there's at least one thing where we're better, and that's ice hockey. All right, but adding to a little bit that I've been whole my working career working global companies. So as much as I like the rivalry of Sweden versus Finland, and in one way it's good to benchmark yourself to the neighboring country because like the circumstances or the environment, there's similarities in there. So it's a good benchmark, but it should not be the only benchmark. And I think we should be more benchmarking what's happening globally, because eventually that's the ultimate goal. How do we win in the global markets? And there you are competing against everyone.
And I would maybe still add there as well that I don't really, like in general in life, I don't believe in looking at the differences or like kind of thinking that who's better at what, but I think it more from the point of view that what can we learn from each other. And I've been working in Nordic collaboration for most of my adult career. I worked at Nordic Council before starting to work in the startup field as well. And I think kind of this whole Nordic cooperation also in the field of startups is something that we should do a lot more now. In recent weeks, we've been talking a lot with different leading hubs in Norway and in Sweden, that how could we work together even better so that then we wouldn't maybe have just Finland or just Norway as markets, but we would actually have the whole Nordic area as a really united market and kind of a playing field for the startups as well. Because especially in this time when the world around us is in turmoil, so I really believe very strongly that there's such a strong value, kind of a shared value base in the Nordic countries as well, that we could do a lot more together and benefit from those strengths in different countries, whether it is then kind of the skills that the Swedes have in marketing or the skills that the Norwegians have in terms of the energy fields and whatnot. So in that sense, we at least kind of vouch a lot for collaboration. I seem to be talking about collaboration a lot like these days everywhere, but I think it's something we should do more in the Nordics as well.
Maybe one more question. Startup density in Finland is relatively high. How can we ensure we have enough ambitious founders in the future as well, especially female founders?
I think maybe the first kudos goes to Aho Peltonen Engeström for the book. So for the, what's it called, Startup Guidebook or whatever. I think so that sort of activities, they really fuel the foundation that Anssi was also speaking of, so that we keep the foundation really, really healthy. So I think that sort of activities, they're really key. Slush is key, Junction is key, Aalto University definitely. I think these sort of ecosystems and like, you know, Maria 01 for sure as well. I think these are very, very central to, you know, having a healthy founder base moving forward as well.
I think role models are, when it comes to female founders, I mean, role models are extremely important. Like, you know, like we not only founders, like also leaders, like, you know, Marianne Vikula at Volt, and when it comes to founders like Monika Liikoma and Dennis Johansson of Enfuse, I mean, huge role models. I think I'm not really, I mean, obviously I'm worried as a woman, like, you know, but I'm not really that worried because I'm totally sure that will come. I mean, it only takes a little bit time, like, you know, and we will see hugely successful female founders. I see that in students and in around Aalto University and so on. So I'm very optimistic.
There's a lot of positive things. I still remember when I started my career 25 years ago. I studied industrial engineering and management, and then I got a summer job in a small company because they didn't call them startups at that point, and I went there as a software engineer. And every friend I had were, oh, Anssi, you didn't get anything else. They saw it as a bad thing. today it's a good thing that you go to startups and scale-ups and develop product and build stuff. And I love that that sentiment has fundamentally changed already when you're studying. And now it's been amplified, for example, exactly the Jyris and Timo's book, fantastic thing. And they're also now doing a tour, visiting schools and telling these stories. And that shapes the mindset that our talent has, our younger talent, that when they study, they're thinking more about what could I build, what could I found. But then it's also, as mentioned, the role models, that we have great role models and more are coming at the moment, and also female founder role models is definitely needed. This is sometimes I found myself puzzling, is that I just know so much fantastic female talent, and many times comparing to the male ones, the female talents they're better disciplined, better structured, really smart, get things done, but sometimes they get a little bit maybe stuck to the details, might play a little bit too safe. So that's just where it needs to be a little bit more bold, courageous, and go forward. But I think the role models that we have will help and show us well that it is possible and we should do that more. I definitely hope that we will get a lot more female founders, and because that diversity will also mean that the startups and products they are building will address and be applicable for a larger addressable market.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I'm a huge believer in role models as well. And I think, for example, the work that Monica is doing is amazing, that she's putting so much of her time and effort into speaking at different events and kind of being around those like future female founders as well. Because I'm really kind of strong in believing that you can only beat if you can see it. I wanted to be an English teacher when I was younger because the English teacher was the most educated person who was able to work in a different language that I knew in my small village. So I think it's like really something that's kind of tells that you can only beat if you can see it. And but I think also like one of the things that we don't maybe always recognize that well is that actually in our ecosystem we've had female leaders in almost all the ecosystem organizations for the past couple of years. And I think this is something that we've been often talking about with very many people in the ecosystem, like say with Slash and with Startup Foundation and so forth, that now is the time that although kind of we are not founders in these roles, but we are in the roles where we can actually lay the grounds for the future female founders to kind of emerge as well. So whether it's about programs, about collaboration, about kind of doing the work to make kind of women in this field more visible as well, I think it's key in the sense that hopefully this work that we all do is going to yield the results in the up and coming years. And I think we have great examples already, like Wednesday, for example, working with the young future female founders as well. Really, really great work. So many high school girls as well thinking about building their own companies already. And if we can boost the confidence already at the very early stage that you can do this and you don't have to kind of think about the failure as something of a major blocker. So I think then we're on a good path.
Yeah, and I think on a global level, so a good point about diversity is that diversity typically attracts further diversity. And I think like what the US and Silicon Valley has absolutely gotten right, maybe partly due to their cultural heritage. I think the cultures there are just very, very inclusive. I think the Silicon Valley companies, they really took it on the top of the agenda that the culture has to be inclusive for everyone from different backgrounds, different education levels, whatnot. So I think this is a key factor, not only for the ecosystem, but also for the companies operating in this ecosystem. So if we go back to the point that maybe the companies that are the hypergrowth companies in Helsinki, they might be the breeding ground for the next founders. So the culture inside these companies, it's very important that it scales inclusively as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's maybe finish at this positive note. But I guess we have a bit of time for questions if we have any questions from the audience.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you, Sarita, for the great walkthrough through the report. Fantastic news. I'm going to touch upon a subject that you, Anssi, raised up a while ago. Your opinion and your solution, what do we need to do that the trend that we're getting less and less startups. That's basically what the numbers are saying now. What's the reason behind that, and what can be done?
That is a fantastic question. I wish I would have a silver bullet answer for that one. We've been thinking about and puzzling that a lot. I hope that this is just. So what happened is that after what happened to Nokia in 2010, we saw that the number of startups started to grow. And I think we had a peak 2015, 2016, and then it's been on decline. And I hope that this is just a valley we have and then it starts to grow. My personal theory is this, that when a lot of talent became available, because they didn't go to Nokia anymore, they looked around, what options do I have? So you had quite a less options. And then just this talent was more that, okay, I'm going to start a company. And then naturally we had a good nice like wins there. We had Ravio showing examples, Supercell. So it kind of, there was a wave, a positive wave, and many companies were founded at that point. But then what I believe happened is that the next wave of talent were in a different, let's say the talent that we had that came to the market 2015 versus 2010, they had more options, because then you had actually more startups and scale-ups where to go. So instead of founding more companies, they went for startups and scale-ups. And I think this has been happening. And in one way, it's a positive thing, because naturally the startups and scale-ups need growth mindset, hungry, ambitious people in there. But I think as a byproduct, less new startups were founded. But I believe what will happen now is that there's been now so much more groundwork happening through the entrepreneur societies. By the way, we have 18 entrepreneur societies in Finland. Aalto is just one of them. And all this grassroots movement, all these options, how you can like found a company, go to accelerator, whatnot. So I believe that we will reverse this trend going forward.
So it's been only 6 months since I moved here. So Sisukas Turkulainen, Helsinkilainen, Duolingo level 9. But I was involved in the ecosystem development of both Turkey and the Middle East for many years ago. And I also lived in the US, which is a completely different planet, not even here. My question to all of you is, I've seen corporates becoming more involved in all these ecosystems at some point, which actually brought a lot more funding, a lot more growth. And I've been talking to a lot of corporate leaders since I got here, and it's been depressing. So how do you see the Finnish corporates, large corporates, not just the government, being more involved, being more attached to the startup ecosystem? Because I don't know if there's any corporate venture capital. I don't know if they're investing in the most VCs. But I think everything that you said, like talent is here, experience is here, serial founders are here. I'm also a FIBAN member, so there's some angels. But I see the biggest probably missing point is the corporate attachment to the startup system in funding and in revenue, which is not going into startups, which forces Finnish startups to go abroad quickly, which is a good thing. But again, that internal funding stops the economy from growing, creating more talent, bringing more people. How do you take that?
Excellent and very difficult question. That's something we haven't really discussed here a lot, and I mean that maybe underlines your point. It's not an issue here. Does anybody has anything more intelligent to say?
I think we touched that a little bit earlier, that maybe our corporates are playing it too safe. And I just believe that is what is happening. So it is safer to choose an existing known company that is in there instead of like looking maybe a little bit more closer what other local options I might have. And it goes the same thing as well. I would really hope that the startups we have in here would have more local design partners as well, and an expert that you can build the products together with. This was at the core how we built Smartly. So I was the founding chief operating officer at Smartly, employee number 5. And we struggled to get design partners in Finland. We tried, but we found the first ones actually from Sweden, and then very quickly from Germany, because they were more willing to accept working with a fast-moving startup. They were more willing to accept that not everything is ready. We didn't have all the bells and whistles, but when we proved that we're able to move fast and we're able to ship things fast, they work with us. And this is maybe sometimes a little bit that courage once again, and willingness, that's maybe missing a little bit still in here.
And I would maybe add that I think kind of, especially touching the investment side, that we've kind of lost the culture of the corporates being a bigger part of the society. Because if we think about like kind of back in the early 1900s, so most of the big companies had like their daycare, so they had like kind of housing for their staff members or whatnot. And it was really kind of like the companies saw themselves as like kind of building blocks of the society. And then we built the welfare society and kind of this, maybe the role of the corporates changed a bit. Because then I think this is something that we see in different countries quite a lot, that where maybe the societies are built differently, but then corporates are taking more responsibility for example, building the nation as well. I think Japan is great. Of course, they have these like kind of generational companies, but they, for example, most of their bigger corporates, they have these future funds. Like there's one that Canon, for example, has one that is even called Future Fund, like Mirai Fund. And so they are not thinking about their own business. They're thinking about the future, that how can we make sure that there is a world for us to do business in the future as well. And I think that's something that we're really lacking in Finland, that many of the corporates don't have this culture that they would see outside of their own domain or outside of their own business as well, that maybe it would make sense to invest in this completely different field or have that CVC fund, for example. And we'll see if that some point like comes here to Finland as well, but I think we only have a handful of CVCs, for example, here right now.
Yeah, and I guess it's, by the way, I have to say, you probably noticed from the puzzled faces here at the panel as well that it's an excellent but a very difficult question. I was thinking now that what's the difference between Europe and the US specifically here on this front. So Europe, it's a lot of old money. It's a lot of many European companies are run by families, right? They could even be named by the family surname. So inherently, these companies take fewer risks, so they don't run the same as Silicon Valley hypergrowth company taking huge bets all the time. And then if you look at the Helsinki index, for example, the 25 biggest companies in Helsinki, for many of them, the industry might just not be directly connected to the startup ecosystem. What I mean with this is it's easier to make the connection between Amazon investing into OpenAI or Databricks. It's very easy to make that connection. It's much more difficult to make a connection between UPM and Supercell. It's difficult, not impossible, but for that sort of comes to mind.
So thank you very much to our lovely panelists for discussion.
Thank you.